Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing podcast on politics, media, and much more. I'm Alex.
Listen, if you idiots can't guess what the podcast is about, you don't deserve to listen to it. It's not Alex's fault. And I'm Aiden, the belligerent one.
We're only here for the day one supporters.
Yeah.
Ride or die.
I'm Jason.
Which is currently like two of us. All right. Yeah, so this one's my episode. My brain is already pre-melted from working on that, so you'll have to forgive me. Let's see what we got.
Puddle of plasma.
I think I'll start us with a interesting section that I like to call truck nuts.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
From Bloomberg.com, Ottawa declares state of emergency after protests spin out of control. With 2 bullet points. We have to get our city back, says the mayor after a week of mayhem, and police seize fuel and propane at camps set up by a trucker convoy. This is all in Canada, by the way.
Yeah, it's in Ottawa.
Yeah, we had an Ottawa, California the other time, so I just want to clarify this is in fact Canada.
Bamboozled.
What's the trucker point? I don't get it.
It's a bunch of truckers who are having a protest at the Canadian Capitol.
Yeah, truckers have physically protesting against the vaccine mandate. A minority of truckers have.
Yeah.
Wait, that's what the protest is about?
You spoiled it because apparently you knew about it, but I was going to say, what do you think this is about? What kind of protest do you think this is? It wouldn't have mattered if you already knew. So.
Yeah. Well, I know, and it's stupid. And
man, see, I thought it was going to be about something smart, like they're worried about automation and their jobs in the future.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, truckers.
Yeah, it's like
I'd be trucking up.
It's not even the majority of truckers, and a bunch of them are coming up from the U.S. to do this, because a few truckers were on some Facebook group saying let's block off trade between Canada and America to protest vaccine mandates in Ottawa. Libertas.
I mean, that is funny. I approve of their organization.
It's an effective use of their hardware and their power, I suppose. I wish they were putting it towards more constructive ends, but they're making a statement.
It shows you how much power even a handful of cranks can have when they actually take collective action. Again, collective action is collective action, even if it's used by essentially proto-fascists and imbeciles. It does work,
right?
This is something only. I think something like 80 to 90% of the truckers are vaccinated and are fine with being vaccinated. This is an extreme minority, but even an extreme minority that acts collectively in numbers can do this. In fact, so threateningly that even traditionally right-wing things like Bloomberg reports, mayors, and police turn against them because of the disruption it represents.
Yeah, but the difference is it's a different kind of right-wing. It's right-wing corporatist versus right-wing populist.
Yeah, exactly.
And they each moralize differently.
When I first read this, before I understood what it was in reference to, I was sure this would be in some sort of anti-labor article, but no, it's just 2 different kinds of right-wing shitting on each other. It's very funny to me.
I really enjoy that. We're in 2022. We're in the height of modernization, and you can still just block off trade by putting a few big objects on a road. That's all it takes. There's something beautiful about that.
This is a convergence of some of our earliest episode riffs, like the Plague Riders of Nurgle and the
checkpoint of drunk
and
people.
The checkpoint of drunk Canadian drunks. Because this is a bunch of Canadian chuds driving their huge trucks into the capital and just leaving their engines idling because fuck your environment
and disrupting capital.
That's actually the problem. I read a little bit of the article because I was so baffled at what I was understanding here. Basically, they're just idling their engines 24/7 to make a ton of noise and to pollute the environment because fuck the ecosystem and fuck leftists. I guess I don't know what the
fuck this world that liberals live
right. It was just I'm taking you all down with me. I don't know what the plan there is. It's a very slow death. Yeah, that's actually what they're doing, and no one they're apparently doing cat calls and harassing anyone who tries to walk by them.
Don't all these truckers work for companies that will just fire them?
Yeah, you'd think, especially in Canada, where there's a legal mandate that they do the very thing they're protesting. It's not optional.
It's not like England where they've just ended all COVID restrictions.
Yeah, it's no. If you want to be a trucker, there you got to get vaccinated. Go fuck yourself. And this is, I guess, what they're angry about.
All right, so the 90% is out of rationality, not necessarily agreement.
Right, but they're rational enough to not go to the Capitol and honk horns and blast like their engines for no purpose while still needing to get vaccinated.
At least it's not violent.
Oh, speaking of which, the
He's
next
what's so-
trucker article.
Well, hang on. Before that, I don't really like the headline. They're making the scene bigger than it is.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know who that serves. I don't know why they're making it sound like there's a goddamn race riot. Like, does that make the truckers look like assholes? Does that make the truckers look like martyrs? Does that, like,
Right.
who is this article serving?
I will point out, though, it is kind of big. Like, they actually evacuated Justin Trudeau because they were afraid he might get attacked.
Yeah, but
from his home.
everyone hates him, so...
Well, no, he is a piece of shit, but like...
He just accidentally created beef with, like, every single community somehow.
I'm not saying they created the Paris Commune, but they've basically taken over several blocks of the capital. So it's not trivial, but it's also not, it's not a riot.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they're not all getting shot, like if they tried to take over fucking 1600 Penn.
Or if they were fucking indigenous people, like, have been brutally attacked by police throughout the previous decades and centuries, from purging to like the just 2020, with oil rig protests. I'm sure it's just a coincidence though that these people are not being forcibly removed.
I mean, I firsthand witnessed the pseudo cops with fucking M4s clearing out the homeless camps and clearing out the dredges from whenever there's going to be an organized event in DC, which is that a dozen times. Like, I'm glad Canada does not have the balls to do stuff like that brazenly and publicly.
Yeah, that's always sickening to watch, especially in a city that was essentially built by slave labor. But anyway, let's talk about my only other truck nut story. It's a brief but amusing section. 3-year-old shot during altercation between two truck drivers.
Oh, how amusing.
This is from Local 12 News.
How? What are the mechanics of this? Where is the 3-year-old?
That's a great question. It's been a bad week for truck drivers.
Was the 3-year-old in one of the trucks? Was it just a bystander in another car and like a ricochet got him? Did the kid survive?
Was it one of the truck drivers?
I actually have the info because I didn't want to be too depressing. The kid is alive and well. Only relatively minor injury in like a limb. Took to the hospital. They're fine. I believe it was one of the trucker's children who was in a passenger seat.
Kids are pliable.
And it was a road rage incident where they were like yelling at each other. They're two tow trucks, so I think we're trying to pick up the same person or something.
Oh, come on.
And they started blasting.
Truckers have solidarity. Usually the road rage is against civvies.
I have
not
no
other
idea.
truckers.
I will point out this was in Philly.
Ah, okay, well.
So
that explains that.
Say no more.
The city of brotherly animosity and hate and angst and horse shitting.
It kind of felt like an Always Sunny bit, yeah. Like they came up with like the gang gets together and makes a tow truck without in any way registering
like
unionizing or anything, and then they like crash into an actual one and it turns into a shootout with Frank. Like that's what this made me think of.
Yeah, one guy's like, "I'm going to tow your truck," and then the guy's like, "Well, I'm going to shoot your kid."
Yeah, but Frank always misses at least.
Yeah.
Well, no one got killed, so
just winged.
Somehow they missed each other despite like unloading full fucking magazines at each other.
Absolutely insane that something like that can escalate.
How are Americans so bad at shooting? Like, you'd think that everyone would be like the liberal driller or like Clint Eastwood, but no, everyone sucks. If you have a gun, at least practice. At least understand like trigger discipline and safety.
What makes it really bad is they knew that the kid got shot because they like cried out, and the other person just fled the scene instead of trying to help save them.
Well, yeah, you're not gonna go save the kid you just shot.
I don't know. I'd take the L and try to save the kid.
Peace out. Fuck that kid. That kid's the kid of a bad trucker.
Yeah, fuck that. Yeah, he deserved it. All right. Speaking of escalating violence, let's turn to our international section. You heard about this Ukraine problem?
No.
Yep.
So from NPR.org, U.S. says Russia has amassed about 75% of the troops it would need to invade Ukraine.
So, at the UN or at like the G20, do they just have a giant board of risk?
It seems
and
like
Russia's
it.
Like, I'm gonna move 3 armies down. Like,
yeah, they're playing Stratego.
How does the U.S. know what the calculation is for the number? The only way the U.S. would know how many troops you need to take Russia or Ukraine is if we also have that number in mind. because we thought at some point taking Ukraine.
We have that number in mind for exactly that reason. But also, we almost certainly have done simulations playing as the Russians as well.
Yeah.
It's like a battlefield map. I'm Russia. I'm Russia in this game. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? I mean, this is once again, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but I did a lot of driving around last week, and I was listening to NPR, and when it wasn't playing classical music, I was listening to their news stories. They talked about the Ukraine issue a lot. They had reporters go there, talk to people on the ground there, and it's been shit since 2014. Like, we all kind of know that, but I don't even really understand why things are escalating now. Like,
Me neither.
Russia's been fucking with them for a while.
They haven't even found Yaroslav yet. It's too early.
Fuck that bone loser.
Yeah, I mean, like Crimea was a very purposeful and intentional annexation and invasion. I actually don't really understand like what the brinksmanship in here is supposed to achieve. I guess maybe the Kremlin knows more about or suspects more about the Ukrainian government's or the Ukrainian people's intentions vis-a-vis joining or not joining NATO. But I feel like Ukraine very well knows the risks that it's stuck in, just like any other.
Yeah.
They think they can just do what Hitler did. They could just slowly creep in and take Swaziland, and then take a little more and a little more and a little more, and like no one will be not.
Yeah, I mean, Putin's using the same rhetoric that Hitler did about shared cultural heritage and roots. And
I mean, this is just irredentism 101. It's not surprising. It's just like
they've always been
the question is, why is it an issue now? Why did we not take it seriously in 2014? Or like, why are we taking it so seriously now? Like to me, it's the inconsistency of our foreign policy, not necessarily the particulars of like, why is one country being, kind of lashing out and why are they not?
So just for fair reference, I mean, Putin's a belligerent prick, and he almost certainly should not be invading Ukraine. But there is a certain logic to it, which is that Ukraine was historically part of Russia for many centuries. So it's an argument over whether it ought to be a separate country or not, which is a completely different argument than like, is it currently a separate country? That
sounds like apologetics. Like, I'm not saying you are saying it, but like all countries have borders. Like, fucking countries the Baltic states have broken up since the 90s. Like, new countries have formed in the 2000s in Africa. Like, the new borders are the new borders. There's no real use in having petty squabbles over.
Well, sure.
Like, they shouldn't be borders.
Again, the borders were created largely to favor the NATO alliance because of the breakup of the Soviet Union and its inability to control them. So what Putin's trying to do, other than just protect his own political interests, which is always what he's trying to do, is to make a claim that like these borders were drawn unfavorably towards Russia and its interests, which is correct.
Cool.
But irrelevant in the sense that he can't undo that now without provoking a nuclear conflict. So, yeah, I mean, he's not wrong to say that the Soviet Union got fucked in the way that it was dismembered like by vultures at the end of its life. It's just that there's nothing he can really do about that now because he doesn't have the power to undo that.
He's acting like a cop stole his like bag of chips and like stole it through eminent domain or something. Like, no.
It's almost like he wants military reparations, which is a very weird thing. Like it's like he's like, okay, so the Soviets got fucked, so can I have Ukraine back? And everyone's like, no.
Like, if you would like to negotiate a political annexation where the Ukraine gets representation in Russia, cool. Do that politically. Do it diplomatically.
Yeah.
We do not have the tolerance or patience for fucking violence.
I mean, the only thing that really matters, in my opinion, is obviously what the people of Ukraine want, and unfortunately, in the imperial hegemonic reality that we live in, they can never really truly express self-determination as they want to. So, hopefully,
because no one can. Even the best Western democracies are sucking shit at self-determination.
Yeah, everything.
So how do we expect some fucking autocratic dipshit place like Russia and Ukraine to figure it out? Like,
but one of the things that gets grossest is that the Ukraine typically splits along left-right lines, with the left wanting to merge with Russia and the right wanting to remain independent.
To be like an Ireland, like helpful push to the left for Russia?
No, because there's the anti-Russian forces are most closely associated with the Nazi collaborators and those who consistently resisted the Soviet Union, whereas the pro-Russian forces pine for the era of the Soviet Union when they could collaborate with a much bigger economy and to basically be part of a larger project.
But the Soviet Union didn't really do well.
So, like, there's also an anarchist element there, which is entirely anti-Russia.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying the broadest numbers. Like there's an enormous variety of factions within Ukraine for
Yeah.
many reasons, but the two largest ones, like the sort of nationalist wing, is very unambiguously aligned with the right, which is
Yeah,
why you
logically
see so
makes
much
sense.
anti-Semitic and Nazi shit coming out of them, even though they're not Nazis. In fact, were occupied by them.
Yeah.
So it's very fucking messy. Like I have a hard time ever rooting for Putin in any way, and I still don't. But I also have a really hard time rooting for people who are like everything the Nazis did was good because it resisted the Soviet Union. Like fuck off.
Yeah, it's been a real like rubber band snapback in that entire kind of Eastern Bloc. Like it's very painful for me to examine the like ideologies across demographics in Poland, especially considering how brutalized it was by fascists. But nonetheless, that ideology thrives in larger numbers than you'd hope to see.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just weird seeing Ukrainian nationalists who are basically right-wing xenophobic psychos
Yeah.
fighting Russian right-wing xenophobic
Yeah,
nationalist
exactly. This is
psychos.
actually very to me like the truck thing. It's different
Yeah,
kinds of
it's
right wing
weird.
butting heads.
You'd think they'd want to unite and be right-wing xenophobic nationalists together.
Well, there's actually also a right wing pro Russian
no, it's
faction that is
crazy.
like that. Yeah,
But like
it's really fucking messy.
it's useful to talk about the Baltics again because Balkanization, even though it's not really like
Wait,
that's
the Baltic
word.
states or the Balkans?
The Balkanization.
Yeah, I just wanted to know which one
The
you're talking about.
expression is so useful today because you could talk about things in Marxist terms like atomization and individualization,
Yeah.
but balkanization is also incredibly useful because there's many people who share ideologies or share backgrounds or share lineage or share common interests, yet we've all been balkanized from various different forces, previous invasions, previous administrations, previous corruption. And so we have all these people who maybe have similar interests but on different sides, and people have different interests on the same side. And it's bizarre. It's like our politics is totally the engine, the smooth running engine has totally shut down. One of the valves popped, one of the fucking pistons is like broken, and the whole thing isn't functioning properly. People can't even figure out like which side they're on.
But to briefly reveal my own sort of connection to this, not that I have a direct one, but Jason and I are both descended from Ukrainian Jews who fled roughly before the time of the revolution there, when it was still like pogroms and murder of Jews.
Yeah,
so
early 1900s.
Even though we are of Ukrainian descent, it's Ukrainian Jewish descent, which means we would have been persecuted, despised, and in many cases murdered as our ancestry by the native Ukrainians. And then when the Russians seized it as part of the Soviet Union, that shit was actually put an end to because they didn't tolerate that shit. Now, different kinds of purges went on.
Other horrible shit happened.
But like the anti-Semitism level definitely went down under the Soviet Union compared to what it was before.
Yeah, but fortunately for me, I'm not religious. So even though I'm ethnically Jewish, I don't. Once again, this is a little hypothetical, but I don't know how hard it would have been for me to be like, I'm not Jewish.
Didn't save you under the Nazis. They didn't give a shit if you were practicing. But the point I'm trying to make is it's very messy to say whose country is what and like who is the people who are the people of a country, right? So like you could argue that we're Ukrainian, but you could also argue that we're not because we weren't the mainstream ethnic group of Ukraine, right? And so there's lots of subcultural problems with any nation state, which is why the projects of nationalism have ultimately had so much difficulty over the last 200 years of even defining what it means to be a nation state, and why I think the future, which everyone was kind of hoping for, whether they're capitalists or socialists, was cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic, big nations like the U.S., where there is no defined ethnicity or religion that makes you the state. And part of the problem with that is that tends to be aligned with also imperial powers because they tend to be more like empires than like nation states. So you have this clash between the desire to remain as like pacifistic or minimalistic or anarchistic as you can, and that tends to more easily fit like a single ethnic group. But at the same time, the cosmopolitan nature of a big imperial state is much easier to have like a liberal democracy and to have fewer directly xenophobic assumptions about what it means to be a citizen.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't help that you have massive media and political machines grinding constantly to try to force people to make hard decisions on where they draw the line on their own conceptions of citizenship and cultural heritage and history, because it is to the advantage of larger states that want to gain either soft power over them or directly slice off bits of buffer countries like Ukraine.
But yeah, the reason I actually picked this headline was just because it reminded me of that Leroy Jenkins clip Where it's like, we have a 30.333 repeating, of course, chance of succeeding.
Do you think that was fake?
Oh yeah, it was a staged thing, but it was still very funny how gamified this felt.
That was more upsetting to me than when I never really thought Santa was real, so I don't know. That was a big moment of
a huge blow. Yeah.
I just learned that and it's broken my heart.
You're done. Well, speaking of regrets, I only have one other article on Ukraine, so let's get it out of the way. From New York Times, Ukraine gave up a giant nuclear arsenal 30 years ago. Today, there are regrets. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine turned over thousands of atomic weapons in exchange for security guarantees from Russia, the United States, and other countries. Hasn't really worked out for them.
Yeah, I mean, let's just give them a few nukes. Like they deserve that at this point, I think.
Yeah. This last part's kind of sad, where it's like, here's all these empty promises.
Yeah.
That aren't totally unfalsifiable and unbackupable. But then again, they shouldn't have nukes, because no one should have nukes.
Right.
So, like, they did the right thing under false pretenses, and now it's going to bite them, except it's not exactly coming to bite them, because what are they going to do? Nuke Russia? It doesn't make any sense.
No, it would destroy them.
them.
Yeah, of course.
You can't nuke your neighbor, which is why it's so scary about India and Pakistan being enemies.
Well, so they didn't even know how to use the nukes because they were all Soviet nukes that the controls were actually in Moscow. So, like, it was meaningless to say they even had them.
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
They were Soviet nukes. They weren't Ukrainian nukes specifically.
I just can't understand do people want Biden to be like the new JFK? They gotta ramp that Cold War up again, Jack. Like,
I mean, he's the second Catholic president. Many people almost certainly do want him to be.
Is there just like a 1-to-1 Catholic to Cold War pipeline now? What is happening?
Yeah, exactly.
What is going on? Why are we? See, history was not going to repeat itself, but we're like forcing it in the wrong square. Like we're forcing it to repeat itself. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Please stop.
When you can't think of good new ideas, you got to replay the greatest hits.
Do you like how the U.S. is basically acknowledging here? I mean, it's technically the New York Times, but this is like opinion people from the deep state that nuclear deterrence works, and we should essentially not be complaining when countries like Iran and North Korea do it because they're just being rational. Because like that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, except it only works when it's allies of ours.
Well, yeah, because those are irrational actors. They can't.
If Iraq and Iran had nukes, they would immediately use them on Israel, not use them as deterrents. They would just use them because they're irrational Slavic idiot religious psycho.
Yeah, exactly.
That's America's opinion of the Middle East.
All those Ukrainians, North Koreans.
Yeah, Ukrainians, they're like almost European. They're white. They're rational.
European enough for our purposes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on this Christopher Hitchens kick recently, and their algorithm loves sending me more. So I was watching a couple of clips of his last night, and one was really good is from the 90s, where he did a interview on CNN before CNN was like political at all. It was just a normal news channel, and it was a debate. It was like the proto forms of those two talking head segments. But it was Christopher Hitchens as like a 30-year-old Marxist arguing with Charlton Heston about the fucking Desert Storm, and it was amazing because Charlton Heston used the same logic. It was like, well, if we let Iraq get nukes, they'll use them on Israel, and that's the number one thing to protect. And then Hitchens just fucking hitch slapped the shit out of him a million times. It was great, but the point is, like, yeah, it's always the same argument. Some people, countries on this list we can't trust with nukes. Countries on this other list we can trust with nukes, and those lists are always conveniently who are strategic allies and who are strategic opponents.
I just think it's very funny.
It's not even an attempt at a consistent argument. It's always just special pleading. It's this. Yeah. Every single political argument for the last 100 years has just been special pleading. Well, we like ours, we don't like theirs.
I think it's funny that they, on the one hand, blatantly reveal, yes, nuclear deterrence works, and so it's completely rational for states to seek that out, even if they have no particularly aggressive ends, while at the same time saying, shame on you, nuclear disarmament peaceniks, for ever having us ever disarm anyone.
Right, they're throwing shade at our previous diplomatic successes.
I know.
Not just effort, but actual wins.
So before it was disarmed, Ukraine had the third largest nuclear stockpile because that's where the Soviets are putting a ton of their missiles because they're trying to deter aggression from Turkey and other places that the U.S. had stationed their missiles.
Europe.
So Ukraine didn't have this huge stockpile because it was like a domestic massive producer of missiles or something. It was because the Soviet Union saw it as the place where they were most likely to get attacked.
Right. That's like saying in the future, Cuba becomes like a democracy we like. And it's like, and then someone else threatens Cuba, like, Cuba gave up their nukes, and they're regretting it now. Like, no, they were there for their own protection. They were there to threaten us.
And after the scare with Chernobyl, I think Ukrainians are more than happy to not have a radioactive nightmare like ticking time bomb in their backyard. So having that removed was kind of a common sense thing, especially considering that they had no way to use those nukes, as we already pointed out, without like blowing themselves away, because the only places they'd shoot at are right next to them. So it made complete logical sense for essentially the third largest global stockpile of nukes to be disarmed. It was a massive win for nuclear disarmament. And now it's like even the New York Times is like, what if we didn't? What if we maintained as many nuclear armed states as we could?
I swear to God, Saruman runs the New York Times. It is so fucked. He's just constantly dividing people to war. Like, it's just every day. We're inundated more with fucking a dude at his tower divining evil futures.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing they are most consistent on. They're a completely like schizophrenic, manic pixie girlfriend when it comes to social issues. When it comes to war, 100% every time. Always pro-war, always pro-imperialism, without fail. So, I mean, I don't know why I would be surprised. I think they're probably to the right of most right-wing papers on this. Because at least they're skeptical sometimes of like, well, maybe Russia helped Trump, like they'll have a few objections, but not the Times.
Yeah, well, it's like, I feel like every few months they have a really impressive, striking example of like investigative journalism, which makes me kind of nod my head slowly, like, okay, there's still something to this paper. But then for the next 5 months, it's just spewing out propaganda.
Well, yeah, they're a massive paper. They have a lot of journalists out in the field, like doing jobs, but the editorial direction of the paper as a whole is
100%
pro-war and pro-capital. It's fucking tragic.
Absolutely.
So I have a question. I've been getting that tinkling sense in my balls recently that Trump may run again.
Yeah, might.
He's very scary to me because I thought he was for sure done, but
I think he'll run for scam reasons. I don't think he's actually has a chance.
Yeah, but that was the first time when he ended up winning. Do you think any of this extreme angst around Russia is like a deterrent for, like, to try and deter them helping Trump and like Trump in general to be like, oh, we're taking it seriously this time? This whole Russia thing.
If Biden gets into an actual war, he will win a second term if he wants it, because that's how it works. You don't,
and it will be convenient.
We almost never switch midstream,
right? And it will be convenient if that war is with the state we have convinced ourselves was the one that helped Trump win in the first place.
And seeing as the Democrats have been pushing for like a new Red Scare against Russia for the last 4 years, it would not be surprising if they actually planned.
Right, like that's how you delegitimize 45.
The only reason,
saying, we only did it with Russia.
The only reason I don't think it's that is because I don't think the Democrats are smart enough to plan that far in advance. But well, maybe,
I don't know. But when they're feeling particularly evil, plans get better. Like they're better at planning for evil campaigns than good campaigns.
That's probably true. Let's turn to the other side of Asia. We've been focusing on the near Europe side. Let's go to China with Yahoo News. This is kind of a dark comedy. A man in China who apparently tried to kill himself said he was ashamed that his son was still single at 29.
Uh-oh.
The guy survived. He tried to throw himself in front of a train, but someone stopped him.
The dad did?
Yeah. No one has been directly harmed except emotionally.
Wow.
I mean, that's kind of fucked.
What an absolute drama queen.
Once again, society where there's a 12% gap between the number of available women and the number of available men. Favoring women in the sense that there's 56% male, 44% female. This should not be surprising.
But once again, this has been framed and self-framed by the dad as an individual issue.
Right.
Why is my son so bad at dating? Why is he single? Not why has the rules and policies and systems put in place created a society where there's hugely disproportionate men to women, where there's huge pressure to sustain yourself at a very young age and fit into a corporate cog machine. Like, he's taking all these as if they're individual failings and not, well, I'm part of a system that has deep flaws.
You cannot see it as a systemic problem.
There's a pandemic raging. It's impossible to go on dates.
Right. It's barely possible to go on dates in the first place. All places like locked down because of the pandemic. China's like created a prison state to try to stop the disease. Yeah, like, but even more ridiculous. Like, it's not. I mean, yes, the systemic issues with China's former policy is like half of the story. The other half of the story is the same exact conservative chauvinism that was typical of certain parts of Chinese culture. Is that it discouraged the survival of girls because they were favoring their male children over their female children. It wasn't just the policy, it was the reaction of conservative values to those policies of saying, all right, well, then we're just going to terminate our female children.
But it's also perfectly in line with their insane, like, no more sissies. Like, this guy is fucking trying to commit seppuku because his son's not, like, macho enough to be, slinging dick all 24/7.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
And I think that there must be a non-zero percentage chance that his son is dating someone and just does not want him to meet his horrible dad.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck that guy.
You know what's going to be great about the next 20 years? You can have all these self-proclaimed Chads. Although, there's obviously been Chads in the past. But they're going to have all these self-proclaimed Chads who give birth to, like, shitty beta sons. And they're all going to be so disappointed. It's amazing. And they're all going to have the meme language and culture to discuss it in. So there's going to be some, like, Gen Zer in 20 years who's going to a therapist like, my fucking son's a loser. He's not Chad like me. It's like,
you're just looking forward to a repeat of what's currently going on with, like, Boomer and Greatest Generation.
Yes, just with different language.
So there's just some mega Chad asshole. Yeah. Some Giga Chad is sitting there in the therapy sofa.
Exactly. That's going to happen. And there's going to be therapists who have to deal with it. And I'm laughing.
That is kind of funny.
I feel bad for future therapists.
Everyone, go become a therapist. The industry there's only room for growth potential as the world slowly devolves into psychic insanity.
I think this next one's about Asia, but it's the most gibberish thing I've ever read. So you tell me what it's about.
Asia Minor.
From Reuters. Asia shares slip as U.S. jobs stunner hammers bonds.
It's about the stock market.
Something about the stock market.
But
I don't know what.
I thought our job numbers have been bad, though. Did we have like a good month? Was January good?
We just got a report, and they went up quite a bit.
This felt like to me like it was some sort of hypnotic suggestion or like poetry. I cannot read this as a complete sentence because I feel like I'm missing grammar or missing comprehension.
No,
yes, you're missing economic jargon.
Reads like stroke.
Asia shares slip as U.S. jobs stunner hammers. It's like a Noam Chomsky sentence. It's just what it feels like to me. I'm assuming it's saying something about like Asian stocks are dropping because the U.S. isn't dropping. Kind of. I don't know. Is this news? Like, I don't understand what this means.
It's not really, but the basic logic is Asia's market share of control is going down a little bit because it looks like America's back on the come up. And this eases pressure on things like the Federal Reserve to not keep tightening interest rates. So basically, they're trying to zero-sum game our economies again. If America's economy go up, that means Asia economy doesn't have to put as much pressure to grow and take our shit, so it go down. Like,
so is this talking about like Chinese ownership of U.S. debt?
No, it's about the labor force. It's about bonds and future stocks. It's basically just future speculation. Because that's all the stock market really is. It's gambling. It's it's a game of poker, and one guy, when you're watching poker and the river card comes and one of the guys' percents goes up and one of the other guys' percents goes down because the likelihood of their hand getting better or worse changes.
Yeah.
It's just that. It's just that the US hand was trash, but then it got a good river card and now its odds went back up and the Chinese hand is like a little bit weaker now in probability. It's really just that. It's just raw speculation on economic futures. It's not really a news story.
Constructed in the most confusing headline possible.
Yeah, it wasn't even about the topic per se. It was just I felt like I was losing brain power trying to process this sentence.
The article could have just been called U.S. stocks go up.
Yeah.
I would have done the exact same thing.
It would have been much better. I would have understood it. This is a very short like headline. It's only like 8 words, and yet it felt impossible to understand.
U.S. jobs to the moon, China shares to the hell.
Like I understand Buffalo better than this. Like I understand that sentence better than this one. All right, we've got a big international section this time, lads. Let me find another one that's interesting.
Nice. I can use a vacation.
That's my vacation.
All right.
That's my Louis joke.
Speaking of baffling things involving money, from CNN, Brazil protesters demand justice for Congolese immigrant beaten to death over unpaid wages.
Man, that's a sad story. I'm glad there's people protesting it.
Yeah, it actually sparked a massive wave of protests across like 20 cities, actually.
This is like their George Floyd moment?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm hoping. I mean, it's a horrible thing to have happened, but if it can at least turn some sort of tide for this benighted proto-fascist politics they're living
The only
under.
thing I don't understand is if you're fleeing the Congo, because the Congo sucks.
Yeah.
Why are you going to Brazil, man?
I know, man. It's like frying pan into the fire.
Yeah. Like, Brazil is one of the least functional, despite being relatively large and wealthy overall.
And insanely racist.
Yeah.
Like,
Not
this
the
isn't
place to
surprising.
You know, I want to mention it because just a week or two ago, Francis Ngannou defended his heavyweight title. He's a fascinating guy. He's everyone should look him up even if you have no interest in fighting. But he fled Africa and went to France. Much better choice, where there's a civil society. And yeah, there's problems in France, sure. But they have money, they have jobs, they have security, they have social safety to a degree. They have a functioning system. They're not Bolsonaro yet. Maybe in the future, but not now. And so his is an incredible success story of like trying to avoid getting sold into modern day slavery, getting out of working in sand pits and fucking like salt mines and evil shit, and finally getting to live out his dream. But if you're going to Brazil, like, you're just kind of conceding, you're giving up on your life dream.
Which, you know, again, beautiful country, lots of decent people in it. They're not the ones winning.
Yeah.
They're the ones getting fucked.
Now Brazil can throw me on their hate list along with you, Alex.
Yeah, well, I got on the list just from mentioning briefly a completely verifiable fact that the rainforest is being destroyed, so I don't know what to tell you.
It's a callback.
It's like 20 years or 15 years ago.
Hate dies slowly.
Speaking of France, you're certainly correct that Brazil under Bolsonaro is worse, but France is trying to catch up. From Times of Israel.
What?
You'll see. In bid to fight extremism, Macron seeks to reshape Islam in France.
Yeah, that's something he can do.
Yeah. Yeah, the office of religious reshaping.
Yeah, I should have mentioned, Francis Ngannou is not religious, I don't think. So, not as much of a problem to go to France. But if you're Muslim, maybe don't go to France. Because France is well known, even though, once again, a secular place that I largely agree with their politics. Or their past politics, the fucking French Revolution. They've had a larger social safety net akin with a lot of the Northern European countries. They do not have tolerance for religious differences, really. So France is one of the few countries where you can actually use terms like Islamophobia and be fairly accurate in like describing their actual policies.
Yeah, I don't think it's very ambiguous. Like Marine Le Pen's like, yes, I'm running on the Islamophobic platform. Like they just say it. I mean, this was one of the most insane things I read. So Macron is like a 40-something capitalist banker, like douchebag, and he's like, I'm the new Pope of Islam. I've decided that I understand Muslims, and I'm going to tell them how to be Muslims.
I somehow doubt he's saying that. He's probably just gave like a Trudeau, like, well, we got to do something about it. And then
there's a subhead.
Like, ooh, this is our time to jump and influence this.
There's a subhead. I just wanted to see what you thought. Before I post it, what do you think he's actually doing? Do you think it's just a speech?
My speculation is that he didn't say anything too crazy, and it's just Times of Israel trying to push their propaganda to like force his hand. But
Times of Israel presumably would like what he's doing.
Yeah, that's what. Exactly. They're trying to goad him into doing more.
They're trying to be like, yeah, you're even crazier than you think you are.
Yeah, I got it. Right. Yeah. They want legitimacy for their anti-Islamic policies. Yeah. They want other countries to adopt their apartheid shit. So their boner go up whenever other countries do it.
Their boner go up.
If you haven't already heard of this one, what do you think they're doing?
I have two guesses. The first is that it's just like a new, more stringent, harsher immigration policy to stop "quote unquote" extremists from entering the country.
Yeah, which actually you already have evidence of from a previous news
Yeah,
article.
he's constantly.
They already largely disallow burqas. They already have been restricting immigration for years.
Burqas? They disallow even the basic headscarf.
Right, that's fine. The head wrap.
Yeah, burqas are much more intense.
What's the normal head wrap called? I can't remember.
Hijab.
Yeah, I think it's just
hijab. Sorry,
yeah.
hijab. That's what I meant. What are they like forcing the guys to shave their beards now? Like, come on, I don't know.
My guess too is that he's going to steal Mecca.
Oh my god!
He's doing what Napoleon did. We're going to Egypt.
Yeah,
he's going to make Saudi Arabia a French lake.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck.
It's actually not as extreme as either of those, but it is much dumber.
Perfect.
They
The Forum of Islam, a new body made up of clergy, laymen, and women, is set to lead Europe's largest Muslim community, with all of its leaders, literally all of them, handpicked by the French government.
But they're all Muslim.
Correct. He's creating a Vichy France, but just for Muslims.
The Council of Extraordinary Muslims.
But they're not going to be like an actual political body that makes laws. They're just like an advisory, they're like a PR thing?
My understanding is that he will be delegating them some powers to regulate the community of Muslims.
What does that mean, practically?
I don't know.
This feels like either just incredibly dumb or incredibly dumb and a little bit dystopian.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's a very negative reading of it. I mean, think about whenever the U.S. is whenever Congress wants to figure out a thing, they put together a committee. They call the experts. They call, if it's a religious thing, they get religious people. If it's a science thing, they get scientists, and they kind of get experts to advise them on what to do. Now, maybe that's a very generous reading of what this sounds like, because, as you say, they're all handpicked.
Yeah, it's AstroTurf. They're not this is not bottom up. It's the government is picking people who fit what policies they want and making them heads of this thing.
Yeah, but I don't think there's even enough people for them. I don't know.
Well, France is like 12% Muslim. There's definitely enough people that you can find the ones you want.
No, they're not just finding random Muslims on the street. They're finding community leaders. They're finding. I don't know. I'd have to see the results of it, but
yeah. I mean, a more democratic way or representative.
They're just brown bagging people, giving them a government job.
You're in office. You're not.
Yeah. Would be to have communities or areas elect, or send.
Yeah,
that they think are appropriate, but
we already do that. It's called democracy. It'd be weird to have religious democracy 2.0.
I don't think that'd be weird at all. That's actually consistent with how historical Muslim practice worked. Even in the earliest eras, was popular opinion had a huge factor on who became the leader. But yeah, I would like this to be the more positive spin, but I strongly suspect, given how incredibly corrupt and stupid Macron is, how anti-Muslim most of French society is, how bad his previous policies have been, and the fact that it says handpicked by the government, that this is going to lean towards the dystopian end of things. But
I think
maybe that's too cynical.
Yeah, I think it'll lean towards the nothing. I think this will accomplish literally nothing. I don't think it'll affect or impact anyone.
I'm just saying,
give 12 people a job.
If you think Charlie Hebdo pissed off the Muslim community, I can't wait to see what they're going to think about this.
Yeah, but Muslims in Europe are already so defeated, I don't. Once again, it's not their reaction that they're trying to goad. It's like right wing is Saudis are trying to.
Absolutely, yeah. They're trying to appease the far right within France. Also, this is one of those moves to say we've tamed Islam, so you can calm down. It's really fucking patronizing.
Yeah, it's to say, hey, all previous Muslim was not all Muslims and Islam were not compatible with modernity in Europe. So we've made Islam 2.0.
Yeah. What the Saracen really needed was a frank crusader to decide for them what Islam is.
And this is once again the plight of all imperialist efforts. Reforms do not come from the outside. Reforms come from within. And look, fucking all the serious atheists I followed for years, since 2005, have been arguing this thing. If Islam as a religious body wants to change, it has to do it itself. It has to go through its own reforms. No amount of external pressure is going to make them be like, oh, you know what, we're wrong about this thing. We're going to become modern. No, that's not how ideas work.
I'm just saying, if the Nazi state created the Council of Good Jews, right, with a bunch of handpicked, traitors who basically supported the regime, it would not seem that different to people.
But that would be better if that was pre, Holocaust and pre World War II.
Yeah.
Because that might be a mitigating thing, but I don't know.
It's just, this just feels so gross to me for a state that's been so vicious to people who are practicing or even non-practicing, just associated adjacent to Islam in any way, for them to being like, well, we'll tell you what it means to be a good Muslim. Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't call what France has done regarding Islam as like genocide, but it's certainly second class and like extremely limiting the way we kind of have our racial politics.
And it's led to genocidal acts in places like Algeria. So like, it's not the only reason, but it's a strong variable determining whether they behave in a
but France also
way.
has weird like bonus stats to irredentism in the modern day. That's weird. Like they're fucking responsible for large parts of Vietnam, like large parts of weird shit in Africa, like the west coast of Africa. Like France has their hands in too many politics.
I will credit them the same thing that you mentioned before, which is that they have some of the most left-wing history in the Enlightenment period and the early modern period.
And even a modern secular government.
They're the birthplace of what we largely consider modern leftism prior to Marx.
Yeah.
And yet they became the same imperial hegemon, the same xenophobic post-Christians, the same weird Orientalists as almost every other part of Europe.
Yeah, because capitalism.
No one's immune to that shit. And it's not just capitalism, it's also a baffling sense of national pride and ethnic chauvinism that's never really left that country. So, unfortunately, their right wing was never defeated. Their left wing might have been ascendant for a time, but the French right has always been strong and remains so today. It's where the terms actually originated, both left and right, if we're referring to France. Anyway, let's move to the last one now that we're talking about times of Israel.
Do you guys remember the name of the American operation to shape Europe into a capitalist?
The Marshall Plan?
No, it was like an actual operation name for like funding not anarchist, like violent far right groups in like Italy and other places. Yeah, I'll think of it. I'll think of it later.
Are you thinking of Churchill's League of Good Fascists?
No,
which was a real thing.
No, but I didn't know about that, so I'll add that to.
Really, you hadn't heard of that?
Churchill owned that he was a fascist. Like, it's not even a joke.
Oh, I knew that about Churchill. I didn't know he had a literal league of
that's why he was justifying murdering like 40,000 Greek communists.
Yeah, anyway, Sean Connery.
He was trying to find every fascist who would align with them against Hitler, basically.
He's just reading too much Plato. Yeah. Like, he could be a good dictator. He could be a good king. Oh, interesting.
Anyway, if you think of it, let me know. I'm actually interested in that, but
sure.
From The Guardian, Amnesty International says Israel is an apartheid state. Many Israeli politicians agree.
Wait, what?
Yeah, this one is a real spinner.
That was a twist at the end there.
Yeah. I guess they've been talking to like the Israeli communists.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they're in that. I mean, Israel's in that period that South Africa. So, like, yeah, we own it. And exactly. It's good.
Yeah.
Shut up.
No, there is an Israeli left. They're not winning, but they do exist.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, but see, it would be nice if the Israeli right wing owned. Like, yes, we are pro-apartheid.
You say that, but once they own it, they'll start making policies that are even more brutal because they know.
Right, but then we can like end them.
We won't. So.
And we ended it in South Africa.
We ended it in South Africa because
like the international community.
The international community was on board to the point of like boycotting the entire country. The U.S. held out longer than anyone in stopping.
Once again,
South Africa.
I'm not saying just U.S. I'm saying we as a world.
Oh yeah, the world absolutely would have to step in. The U.S. ain't fucking doing it.
What I'm saying is, even if someone like Biden's in power, if the Israeli right wing's like, yes, we're openly pro-apartheid, man, maybe that changed the sands of where we stand.
And apparently, Amnesty International is already like the fourth major world institution to point to.
Yeah, but like you don't have to be a major institution. You can watch like one video of interviews, and be like, okay, they're an apartheid state.
It's just interesting to see that. I mean, global opinion has always been against the Israeli apartheid state, but now it's starting to become
critical mass,
openly and directly acknowledged by major, even like liberal, forget even left institutions. Something's cracking. Their fault lines are showing for the first time in a while.
Yeah, it sounds like they're ramping up for another mowing of the lawn, and people are not going to be here for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so objectively obvious at this point. Their PR machine must be furiously churning at the moment, and I assume everyone on every side of the bipartisan line in the U.S. government is also furiously condemning Amnesty International.
I don't know. We're tired.
Not too
Too busy
tired.
with COVID.
Not too tired to take that lobbyist money.
These fucking leftists at Amnesty International.
Yeah, yeah.
Who actually wouldn't support the release of Nelson Mandela because he wouldn't refuse violence as an option. Like again, like they actually have a history of not being there for South African apartheid.
Because Mandela was a fucking swagged out baller.
Yeah, exactly. Because he was a real G. Like anyway, yeah, I think they're almost protesting too much to kind of remind everyone, like, hey, maybe forget about the last time we didn't fight an apartheid state.
Yeah, we're finally catching up.
Yeah,
to what.
And it was double because it was also black people.
It'd be really funny to me if Israel's like, yeah, we're an apartheid state, but you didn't call out South Africa, so fuck you.
Oh, with facts and logic. Yeah, Israel calls Ben Shapiro to help.
Exactly, they call him the Ben Shapiro cavalry.
God.
Oh my god!
I always imagine him in like a tiny little, Nazi youth outfit.
Yeah,
fits him nice and cleanly. By the way,
like that scene in Starship Troopers.
I remember the name of the operation. It's Operation Gladio.
Oh
right,
Gladio. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool.
Did you have anything you want to say about it, or just?
So who are these Israeli left politicians who are like, yes, please help us end this?
There's actually a handful. There's actually a handful of really cool Israeli politicians who are in the wings, like the handful of green communist labor parties.
And why do we never hear from them?
Because they're only a small percentage of the Knesset. They're only like combined 15%, I think, of the Knesset. So they always get marginalized because they're never big enough to form.
So they're just in like the crank corner.
They're in the crank, but 100% correct corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because there's not a big enough coalition to form, even if they all united, which they usually try to, because there's no major centrist party anymore.
There's no one for them to align with.
There's no one to align with. There's just right wing and insane right wing, which kind of like the U.S. because their politics are very similar to ours. So like they just don't have anywhere to join. They're kind of like the Democratic Socialists in our country if they actually formed a party that had candidates in major office. It's like in large numbers, but just not enough to actually do anything. Imagine if like we had 40, Bernies and AOCs, but that was it in Congress. And it's like, well, they're there, but they can't. There's no party for them, right? There's nowhere for them to go. So anyway, it's I mean, they do exist and they're actually pretty awesome. It's just there's not much for them. They can't do anything. They don't have the power.
Yeah. They can read press releases and be like, yep, second that.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Interesting.
Anyway, let's come back to domestic things. We've been adrift at sea for too long. All of these domestic ones are about race as well, so just bear that in mind. Sort of.
We're all experts.
Oh god.
Let's start with the least about that. From the Atlantic, in all caps.
What?
For some reason.
Really?
Yeah. The anti-vaccine right brought human sacrifice to America.
Oh my god, Atlantic. Stop pretending you're moderates. It's so embarrassing. It's such cringe. Oh my god.
They calmed down a bit for the subhead.
Less cabs.
Since last summer, the conservative campaign against vaccination has claimed thousands of lives for no ethically justifiable purpose.
You don't say.
I mean, correct. In a literal sense. But here's why I picked this one. Even besides the explicit reference to human sacrifice, this is the image they used at the head of the article.
Oh, isn't that famous painting of like the dissections to understand human anatomy?
Nope. Look carefully.
Okay, of course.
It is literally like an Aztec priest ripping the heart out of a white man who's basically dressed in like a Jesus loincloth, while a bunch of weird, vaguely,
he's also jacked,
like Mexican mezzo style dressed people are holding him down.
Is mezzo style the new hip hop style?
It is one of the most like colonialist racist things I've ever seen.
But this looks like an existing picture. Like I don't think they had an artist make that today.
No, it probably was from some artwork from a long time ago. It's just they're talking about. And like I know this might seem obvious, but I want to clarify in case it isn't. They're talking about a thing that is overwhelmingly a white Christian decision to not get vaccinated based on conspiracy theories and reactionary ideology. And their frame of reference is human sacrifice perpetuated by indigenous people.
Yeah.
having nothing to do with
But
Christianity.
like, there's literally Christian history of human sacrifice they can go to.
Correct.
No, when white people are dumb, they're just transitioning closer to the savagery of indigenous people.
We're almost as bad as the indigenous guys.
Man,
Get your shit together.
This is embarrassing.
Who also, by our naming conventions, were also in America, just a different America.
Yeah.
But man, Atlanta,
They're really bad at trying to be good guys.
It's so gross when they try to be left wing or centrist because they're like, also here's some neo-Nazi propaganda.
yeah,
And we snuck it in.
But like, this is how you know they're right wing.
Yeah.
Because every time they try and Steve Buscemi, hey fellow kids, it's terrible. Like, they can't fake it good enough.
I could not believe what I was like, oh, this article might actually say something good, and I opened it up. It's like, nope.
Nope,
No,
I can
it
blast
isn't.
in the face of this artwork immediately. Knocked out your chair.
That's the other thing that the Atlantic does better than anyone. They do the best headline art compared to any other news website. Their art is always the most like insane, mind palace exploding you can imagine, and I'm here for it.
Yeah,
It's one of my favorite. It's basically
That's
their
true.
only redeeming quality.
it's very true.
So what are the politics of this article? Because it is combined like a whiny neoliberal scolding about the anti-vaccine right with incredibly racist colonialist imagery and anti-indigenous sentiment. So what are they trying to tell us? Like, what are we supposed to take
Alex,
from this?
They don't know what they're trying to tell us, so we can't possibly decipher it.
Yeah.
Because it's probably some insane meandering of, well, I didn't like this and this happened and I don't like that. Like, there isn't cohesive or coherent politics to it. It's the Atlantic. I've totally given up on them as being like trying to have a coherent body politic. They don't.
I just think they're the most interesting to try to decipher.
The subheading is also so strange because it seems to posit that there's like there's a justifiable form of human sacrifice,
right?
If there's an ethical purpose.
This isn't one of the good ones.
Yeah, which is very strange to consider, like an obvious, to me at least, corollary, which is slavery in America, where thousands upon thousands of African people were killed, either just through deprivation and overwork or through actual murder and abuse. But I guess that's different because that wasn't ideologically driven. Atlantic, what the fuck are you doing? What are you trying to say?
They're drunk.
Yeah.
Oh, you're drunk.
Come pick up your homie, New York Times.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's the Atlantic has brought drunk white frat girl energy to America. Like I don't know what this is. I don't understand what point they're trying to make because whatever politics you have, you're going to be offended reading this article.
I think they just it was such a clumsy attempt to latch on to the shaming that is the liberal narrative to try to get like a few likes and clap emojis these days. It's like, oh yeah, aren't people who refuse vaccines stupid and bad? But
aren't they non-white cannibal blood sacrificers? Yeah. What?
So fucking baffling. Like it's 2022. Like this has been talked to death. People understand the concepts of like Orientalism and imperialism and colonialism. This is not new information.
But also, everyone acts like the pandemic happened yesterday.
Well, yeah.
Everyone's like, we just learned that it falls after 6 feet. Like, what are you talking about? Where you been? It's wild.
Yeah.
I could imagine this headline existing, but instead of anti-vaccine right, it's the woke left, and it's about cancel culture.
That's 85% of their articles.
Yeah, exactly.
That will be their next article, basically.
Yeah. They just changed the background of the art to be like college kids with purple hair, and it's the same taking out the heart of liberal America, of lowercase liberal America.
Yeah.
Yep, they're reaching peak efficiency.
Yeah.
Now, incredibly racist imagery aside, I will grant them that there is that like plague riders attitude within America, which is like their foundational assertion, like, is this essentially a form of human sacrifice? Is this needless killing on the grounds of religious ideology?
The thing is, what they have backwards is who's being sacrificed and why.
Right.
They're not doing a virginal sacrifice to appease the gods so that rain comes so the crops are better. They're martyring themselves for freedom, religious, what's the fucking movie with, god damn, the very famous Mel Gibson movie, For Freedom.
Braveheart.
Yeah, they're like Braveheart martyring themselves.
Yeah.
It's not we're sacrificing others, it's we're sacrificing ourselves for the common good because of God.
The irony is this is actually much closer to traditional European forms of self-harm.
Right.
Like, pilgrims getting mugged on the highway and dying of exposure because they want to travel 2,000 miles to see a splinter of a cross, or,
Spear of Longinus.
all of the insane Christian martyrdom that went on during the Middle Ages, the Children's Crusade, where they basically just all became like slaves, or any of the crazy things that extremely pious individuals did to try to repent for their sins.
Self-flagellation.
Yeah, all of which has a Christian and European heritage they could have pointed to without doing any of this insane racist shit. Who are the actual ancestors of these people?
Yeah, but there wasn't any good artwork for that.
Just take a clip from like Monty Python and the Holy Grail as they hit themselves in the head with a board. It's the most accurate thing.
That would have been so much better.
That's what I felt like doing reading this article.
That's what I feel like doing right now.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like the origin of anti-vaccine hysteria comes from a mixture of the Wakefield anti-autism fraud initially, but it largely has grown since then on Christian hysterical, like far-right Christian conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It has to do with apocalyptic visions of the end of America and this
New World Order controlling us.
Yeah.
The elites controlling us. It's all the same.
This is actually very heavily infused with Christian mysticism and conspiracy.
Nothing to do with imperialism, nothing to do with internationalist efforts. It's all Christian born and based.
So
and the rest of the world following it is stealing from America.
To try to shunt it onto like indigenous peoples and anyone who's not Christian is laughable. It's actually explicitly Christian in most cases. Ask any of these anti-vax people why they're not taking it, and you're probably going to get a God-based answer. It's just it's ridiculous to pretend that this is anything but a Western European / American / Christian / white identitarian problem.
What?
Like, yeah, I understand that there's a handful of people who are like, African Americans who are afraid of the government or something, but the vast majority of unvaccinated are still white and Christian.
Even with the lower rates amongst African Americans, there's a Christian tinge to it.
Yeah, there is. Just this was the most upsetting one of all to me, so I'm glad we got this out.
Slavery ruined everything. Slavery made black people Christian.
Careful, you're not allowed to talk about how slavery ruined anything anymore. They banned it in most days.
Like, it's obviously like the miswriting of people and killing them is terrible, but the brainwashing them all as Christians to accept their lot in life as slave is easily the most disgusting, like, mental part of slavery. To tell them they should be happy for their lot in life and they'll be rewarded in a fictional future life is so disgusting. This is why I will never make peace with Christians. Never.
Sorry, Christians.
Their rap sheet is so long and so heinous.
It's not you, it's your religion. Yeah, so speaking of how America treats its race relations and basic responsibility, things are getting better these days when we're finally prosecuting the biggest police killers. Or are they? From Business Insider, the same judge who presided over Derek Chauvin's trial signed the no-knock warrant that led to Amir Locke's death, says report. This was actually a fairly reasonable judge in that trial. He went out of his way to make sure that there was.
Yeah, this is a very recent shooting, right? Where there was a no-knock warrant, and the guy tried to shoot back because he thought they're home invaders, and the cops killed him.
Because that's what it seems like when there's a no-knock warrant.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
If someone breaks into your house with guns, you think you are being robbed. You don't understand that that's the police.
Right, and the conceit is like, what, are you just going to give up? Because if it's a robber, they'll just kill you and steal your shit.
You're in a no-win situation. If you give up and it's a robber, you're killed. If you don't give up and it's the police, you're killed. So how do you know what you're doing?
Shot each time.
They're just gambling with your life, and you have to make a call on the fly.
I guess the conceit is, well, if you're a criminal and there's a warrant out for your arrest, give up.
Yeah, but it could be like a drug charge. You don't even think it's that kind of thing.
Or it could be fake, or the wrong person.
Yeah,
like
it's often the wrong house. That's the whole problem with doing a no-knock warrant. You haven't established the parameters.
They shoot your little dog, too.
This is how Breonna Taylor got murdered, because they did a no-knock warrant and no one could tell what the fuck was going on in a pitch black room.
Well, I mean, this is fucked, but for the judge, it's like another day, another
Yeah,
no
exactly.
no big deal.
This is the reason I think they pointed to it, and I think this is actually a reasonable thing for the news to do. At first, I felt it was kind of propagandistic, but I understand it, which is even a judge who genuinely is concerned with institutional racism to the point that he made an effort to make sure that Chauvin was prosecuted fairly. Even he's basically just accepted the reality of things like no-knock warrants, which should not exist.
I don't know how much credit the judge should actually get. That defense lawyer shot his balls off so many times. I don't know if the judge even had to do anything.
I'm not saying the judge is a radical. I'm saying that the judge did not go out of his way to sabotage the trial. Like,
well, yeah, not like the
do.
Ahmaud Arbery one, and
right?
All that shit.
Or the one with the fucking kid. Like the Rittenhouse judge was just like he's innocent.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's so many judges that go out of their way to defend it.
The Rittenhouse one was actually the worst.
Yeah, this one was just like, prosecute him fairly, which is unusual, right? So we know he's not like a far-right crank, and yet signing no-knock warrants, a thing that should not exist under the U.S. Constitution. Here we are.
Well,
yeah, and now the mayor of Minneapolis has banned them officially when he campaigned for election on having banned them already.
Yeah. Really incredible there.
If we want to increase the incestuous level of this legal police crossover, apparently also 2 of the officers involved were SWAT members who were during the George Floyd protests filmed shooting at protesters without warning from a cargo van
with rubber bullets or something.
Yeah.
Bean bags.
Yeah, just
people's eyes.
Yeah, I was going to say also known as things that destroy people's eyeballs. Yeah.
Less lethal, Alex. They're referred to as less lethal, not non-lethal.
It's just torturous.
It's less. It's a shipment of less lethal aid.
Yeah. Exactly.
I do have one more of these, but I think I actually want to save it for a deep dive if you're interested. About the state of the BLM founder and her mental health. I just think is interesting enough to read. So I'll save that for later. Let's move on to a section I like to call Big Thinkers.
Oh boy.
From CBS News. The $1 billion question. Can you be too rich?
Wait, is this from CBS?
Yeah.
Weird. That is funny.
Answer no from CBS.
That would be very funny, but the answer is yes.
Okay. All right.
So where do they draw the line in the sand?
So this is an article talking about an interesting figure who has only recently come to my attention, Abigail Disney, who is a
really you haven't heard about her? Yeah, she is anti-wealth.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
She's essentially a leftist descendant of Walt Disney.
She's Ron Reagan. That's what she is.
She's technically his niece rather than his granddaughter, but still, or his grand niece. You know, she is an advocate for essentially reducing the amount of wealth held in the hands of a small number of people, and essentially she's a redistributionist and has connections to other people seeking the same thing, which is very funny, right, considering the context. But the whole article is basically her and others aligned with her talking about why billionaires don't actually get any benefit from being billionaires because of the diminishing returns of value on money.
Yeah,
like the marginal return on wealth is such that after $1 billion there's nothing to buy, so
and
there's no reason to do that.
There's nothing to invest in anymore. That's actually like a growth industry.
Right.
So they're just hoarding and buying back their own stock. Like there's an amazing video I want us to watch for a deep dive. Maybe we'll do on my episode, but she's great. She's Ron Reagan of wealth instead of politics. She's wonderful. And I love it when billionaires turn on their family. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Big kudos.
It's it was, again, these are the kind of articles that, like, I always have the assumption they're going to turn wrong because they're so poorly and strangely worded. But this one I'd already been familiar with, and I was glad to see that they were at least trying some effort at saying, let's not just be completely psychotically capitalist. Like, they didn't go far enough, obviously. Like, the article's still like, well, what if 100 million was the cap? And it's like, really?
I mean, but that's a win, right? By the standards that we're forced to deal with. Yeah.
I hate that it's a win, but it is.
Maybe even just practically, it's inefficient to be a billionaire.
Yeah. I mean, they finally at least acknowledged the problem, even if their degree of solution is laughably inadequate. Which, does that take talking to a wealthy heiress to say something that leftists have been saying the entirety of their existence? Probably. Basically it takes like a woman in her 60s who's descended from Disney before people actually listen to like the most obvious left-wing critiques of capital. On the other hand, at least it's working.
Yeah, I mean, we call them baby steps, but when you see a baby take their first steps, it's pretty impressive. So
Yeah, that is true.
it's a good job. You're one step closer to being all grown up, CBS.
Speaking of baby steps, let's look at some that are going the other direction.
No, babies fell down the stairs, huh?
Yeah. From Yahoo Finance, Spotify Joe Rogan backlash widens, but economics back the streaming giant's clout.
Huh? Why? What was this? Hello, fellow kids language.
Apparently, economics support Spotify's clout chasing.
Clout is an economic commodity.
Yeah,
They're paid in clout.
No, they're paid in real money that they're succeeding.
Yeah.
What they're saying is going after Rogan in the first place was clout chasing that was going to end up getting them paid, and that has turned out to be true. Even though Rogan's become a right wing crank ever since.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Like a full on, not just like both sides.
Yeah.
Sometimes, some days he'd like a left wing crank on weed, and now he's like 95% of the time right wing crank.
It's not even a hey fellow kids moment though, because they're using clout as like the original way that it was used before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's cut straight to the point, right? That they'll basically pull some episodes because he said the N word 80 times, and that's not an exaggeration, and they'll move on because he's still worth enough money that the backlash won't cut into their bottom line.
The funny thing is, I think they're actually just throwing good money after bad. Like, I think the article is actually literally wrong, because I looked at the list of the musicians who are leaving the platform over this, and their combined worth is a lot more than Joe Rogan at this point. It wasn't initially because it was just one person, but now it's like 6 different major musicians have pulled off of the platform, and they collectively add up. Yeah, they're all angry because Rogan, not only the racist stuff, but also the COVID denial stuff and like the disinformation that he's spreading on that. So a lot of the context of this, for those who aren't familiar, is Spotify picked up Joe Rogan for $100 million or something, like exclusive contract to only put his podcast on their service. But the problem is Spotify is mostly filled with musicians and other artists and creatives who despise Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan gets picked up, and shortly thereafter, a whole bunch of people who have traditionally been big money makers for Spotify are like, we're not going to be on the same platform as him. He goes or we go. And they go like, well, fine, fuck you. And a bunch of them started in solidarity leaving with another, because it's a bunch of like 70-year-old hippies who have all been friends with each other since the 60s, and they're musicians. They're all leaving the service. So it's it's a huge backlash.
I didn't even know much of this story. I just seen weird allusions, so I was like, I don't know what's happening.
There's so many different old like celebrity musicians who are leaving Spotify over Rogan. So now it's like they're actually losing money now compared to gaining, but they've already like sunk the cost of Rogan. Yeah. And I think they're just too stubborn to admit that they're losing now. They're just like, nah, we're not taking a loss. There's like $400 million worth of yearly income left. There's a platform already.
Yeah, but whatever. It's all fucking Silicon Valley speculation money anyway. They rely on investment. They don't really rely on subscription to actually profit.
But still, it was, to me, this is an article that actually supports a false assertion that this is somehow still them in the black. It's like, no, they've definitely lost money on this by this point.
No, it's hard to know without actually seeing their books. But
yeah, it's strange to use the word economics, I think, as well, because that's such like a
how about just profit?
Yeah,
like, give me the good money.
Or finances.
Economics is about systems, not like what's your economics like? What you like? How much salary I made? Yeah, they're trying to make it more official and normal than it is.
Yeah, more grandiose.
It's really the wild fucking west of internet media.
But I think the articles, I read several articles on this just unrelated that weren't interesting enough for the podcast, and several of them were pointing out that like anything that's like associated with a sort of right-wing Trump adjacent political philosophy has become toxic.
This was a Trump adjacent shooting.
Yeah, like it's become toxic to like younger or even like middle-aged listeners. So unless Spotify wants to cultivate like a grandparent contingent as their main income stream, it's just not an efficient use.
And those people aren't getting on Spotify,
right?
And the vast majority of music right now is made by the young black men,
right?
So like that's for young people who are not gonna. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know how many fucking 21 Savages give a shit about what Joe Rogan has to say. And I don't care how many Neil Youngs there are. I don't think he's the most listened to streamer. So, or, streaming music. So, yeah, I don't know. I could see them still being fined from this or losing some, but not enough to justify, getting rid of Rogan. I don't know.
Yeah. So for his part, Rogan's kind of admitted he is toxic as well. Like,
yeah, because he's an idiot.
Yeah, he's like, hey, I did kind of fuck up. So just like put some labels on my episodes that like I'm a bad person. That was his solution.
Put a parental advisory sticker because I'm a dumbass.
Really, he was like, I say a lot of false shit, so just like put a label on my thing that says I'm wrong.
But see, it used to be funny when he's like, "Oh, I'm just a dude, bro. I don't know. This is why I have on experts to tell me what's real."
Yeah.
But now that he lives in Texas, all his experts are just right-wing cranks. You know, he used to have left-wing people on. He's had David Pakman on twice. He's had Luke Thomas, who's a journalist regarding MMA, who I like, who's left-wing. He's had Sam Harris on, who some of the times is left-wing on some things. Like, he doesn't anymore. It's all just like, what do you think about Atlantis? What do you think about Bigfoot? It's garbage.
It's just cryptocurrency and cryptids.
Yeah, exactly. He's back in his old like 90s conspiracy train.
It's
so got him paid.
It's so weird how obsessed he's been with COVID.
Jamie, pull that up.
Something that he's like basically immunized against in all senses of the word.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Public figures are actually very vulnerable to COVID because they're constantly meeting people.
How many times does he need to get it? How many times does he need to get it and get vaccinated against it before he's immunized?
I mean, I only think he said it once, but I don't think he's vaccinated.
I guess I'm just saying most of his activities, he doesn't really do stand-up these days that much.
He does some local stuff with his like right-wing friends, but
most of what he's doing is his podcast. So if he wanted to, he could demand like a test.
Yeah. He has the option to not get it. He probably won't take it.
He's still doing UFC, and fortunately for him, his boss doesn't make him get the vaccine. So
Dana White's not doing anything like that.
Well, it's a wombo combo of people I used to have a lot more fondness for, but like him and Dave Chappelle basically like gave it to each other hanging out doing concerts. So yeah, like it's
because they've secured the bag. They don't have to be like nice or good people anymore.
They're making decisions that they're going to basically pretend the COVID pandemic doesn't exist because that suits them, and they're rich enough to survive the consequences. So,
and they're right. They're
correct. It's just not.
They just haven't considered that other people listen to them and take their cues from them, even though they shouldn't. Even though they constantly say, "Please don't take your cues from us." You have to be aware of what your audience is doing.
Well, one of the problems of becoming like really successful is that even when you're like a guy in their 50s, people still think you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So even if you're just like a dude bro who's basically Jeremy Piven from PCU, but you're in your 50s, like, yeah, people still think you know what you're talking about. So you got to always wear a huge sticker that's like, I'm an imbecile. Don't do what I'm doing. I'm just rich and getting away with it.
And once again, it comes to our whole American, like, well, if they're rich, they must be doing everything right. And once again, you know, he's a comedian who constantly says, like, I'm a dipshit. Don't listen to me. Yet people listen. Like, well, he made the money, so we must listen to him more. So there's just like these two competing narratives, these two cross-purpose wins that are fucking with his social position in the world, in America.
Yeah. But speaking of cryptids, cryptocurrency, and people who are rich, therefore must be doing everything right. From CNBC, you remember the porn nurse?
The OnlyFans chick?
Yeah. Bitcoin has become a lifeline for sex workers.
Oh my God, stop.
Like this former nurse who made $1.3 million last year. Same woman, by the way.
What is this even? Is she getting paid in crypto like fucking OBJ?
Yep.
What's happening?
She got paid in a bunch of cryptocurrencies and then invested in Dogecoin. It's not a joke.
What? Why?
So the article, the very little I saw at the top basically says because like credit cards were declining her because she was a sex worker.
Yeah.
So she was like, fine, I'll go to crypto. And it turns out that she got into crypto right when it was all like speculation was going nuts and making it skyrocket in value. So she just happened to get in on crypto for like a relatively small amount that now has made her worth millions.
But has she gotten out? Because it's fucking nosediving.
Yes. It's enough to make all the money. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of cryptocurrency in general, but I will say,
go ahead.
I will say that this coincides with what I read today, which is that the Earn It Act is being, or legislation is being reintroduced by our own resident Richard Blumenthal, which is ostensibly to fight child pornography, but would open up a ton of anti-encryption and anti-sex work opportunities for investigation and legislation against them, and to pressure any of these more normalized payment processing services to turn aside sex workers. So yeah, I kind of get pivoting to cryptocurrency in the climate that we are living in and possibly heading into. And I guess this woman's living a blessed life. She's really turned aside from health work and is thriving.
She's going to be a senator in our lifetimes.
And
Like
she'll
the-
probably be an okay one.
This is the like Forrest Gump trajectory that we've all been waiting for. This woman is a mom of 3. She's in her 30s. She's a nurse. She's a former army vet. Like she's going to lead the country in some capacity eventually.
This is unironically what people mean when they say girl boss energy. Like
Yeah.
I would never use that, but
This is the American dream.
yeah.
Like no one can attain it, but she's managed it.
And also, Gen Zers aren't going to hold the porn work against her.
No, I mean I think she's older than me. I think she's like 37. Like she's already to the point where like
She's just going to be the
She
next
can do
Kendra
whatever.
Lust who like
Yeah.
gets into porn late.
it's just really, it's one of these things. It's like you think you have like a weird story that you're never going to hear from again. That it crops up and you're like, oh, it got dumber. Now it's a whole crypto story. I
We love
always
our
couldn't
callbacks,
believe this
don't we,
one.
folks?
Yeah. But now she's like a cryptocurrency advocate for the only reason that, as Aiden pointed out, is actually kind of valid, which is dodging the suppression of credit card companies in the state of legal work.
And it made her individually wealthy.
And there's a whole bunch of sex workers who are all kind of banding together on this idea that like there should be a form of currency they can use that isn't regulated by Puritans, which is valid.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's essentially the only left-wing argument for it. And
Yeah.
I have not otherwise heard good arguments for the adoption of cryptocurrency.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
If it's almost like we should just have regular currency, and the state and credit card companies should
Right,
pull their
they've
head out of
got
their
the problem backwards.
Fuck off.
It's not make a new currency
Yeah.
to avoid the elites, because the elites will eventually just buy into the new currency. Like fucking Chase Bank is trying to get everything in crypto now. It's remove those arbiters of money control from normal currency.
Once again, like I don't want to do anything that like diminishes the intelligence of our presumed audience, but in case you're not sure why this is a problem, the reason why you need credit card companies and the government to recognize sex work and to not fuck with them financially is because the more that you destabilize and make difficult the life of sex workers, the easier it is for everyone else to take advantage of them.
Right, to create a
So-
black market of pimps.
If they can't reliably get paid for the work they do, then they're much more vulnerable to being abused, raped, stolen from, harassed by the police, raped by the police, so on and so forth, because it essentially turns them into a gray or even black market when they're not even supposed to be. In many of the kinds of sex work that they're engaged in is completely legal. Like being a cam girl is legal, and that's basically what OnlyFans is. Being a porn star is legal. Like even
Yeah, but the
prostitution
porn-
in some cases is decriminalized.
But the actual porn industry is far more well regulated and
Yeah.
runs like a corporate machine than it gives off.
But basically, even all of these legal versions of sex work are still harassed by credit card companies and by the US state as if they weren't legal, which is completely insane and ultimately is just dangerous for the sex workers. So if you actually want to end sex work, then you need to reduce the economic pressures that make people turn to sex work, not just torture sex workers.
Right, by like not torturing nurses.
Yeah. So you want, make sure that the minimum wage is a living wage and that women have full and equal rights under the law, and you'll see a lot less sex work. You don't do that by just saying prostitutes' lives become even worse than they already are. And so other sex workers' lives become, somehow stymied, treated as if they're committing sins. It's like there's no such thing as a sin in a secular state. Fuck yourself. That's the problem.
For money.
But
What I did there.
it's yes, very very good.
Pretty good.
It's great. Critics cannot comprehend that these women aren't just inherently sinful, which of course sex work isn't sinful. I'm not trying to imply that, but
No, the only thing is it kind of exploits fucked up men, but whatever.
And it exploits vulnerable women too. I mean, it's just the nature of it's the nature of any capital economy is people who are desperate do things for money.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is in particular, like hot streamers on Twitch or as you say, like cam girls is really the market for the people giving their hard-earned money to that person are their own very vulnerable population.
yeah.
But again, they're vulnerable for reasons that have nothing to do with the cam girls.
The kind of population that Chinese dad wants to kill himself over.
I do wonder, like I feel like maybe it's just like the news cycle I've been exposed to, but it kind of feels like online sex work has exploded during the pandemic, which makes a lot of sense practically. I wonder if that will continue in the long term. And
yes, it's only ever grown in the last few years.
It's safer for everyone than in-person sex work.
Yeah, and what the implications of that are from like the way it influences crazy policymakers to just the way our culture changes. Like will that be more normalized? Like, will people start freaking out so much in a puritanical way, or will it just kind of, like, as you allude to, Jace, with like poor incels who have been denied opportunities to
Yeah, and
normally
that which eventually
socialize?
leads to like a school shooting.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that on the OnlyFans nurse, but yeah,
No,
I mean,
no.
No, no,
certainly not
I'm talking about incels and animus towards women.
Yeah.
That
Just talking
generally
about
comes from this stuff.
outcomes.
yeah. I mean, I think the best thing that could happen from it is that the labor pool of sex workers becomes more independent from both capital and pimps, so that you have people who are essentially going to the equivalent of like an OnlyFans or some sort of
Or making their own platform.
basically who are getting paid directly and not having to get it stolen
Right.
from them in some
Yeah.
way.
Their own porn
Because
Substack.
you think pimps are bad, the porn industry steals almost all of the value of the labor of the porn actresses and actors. So the more that this becomes decentralized, the better it is for these workers. And the ability that there are platforms that they can go to that don't essentially just steal all of the money.
Hey, fingers crossed. Maybe soon they'll be the ones closest to their labor out of all of us.
They're getting there. Yeah. They go into labor. Last article, because I'm running out of steam. And if you know how I work, it's always an animal one. From CNN, chimpanzees apply.
Wait, stop. That's amazing.
Yeah,
We need a chimpanzee.
yeah,
We
it's
saved
our,
the chimps
it's our
from
new
COVID.
publication.
New
Chimpanzees
Patriots
apply
here. Sorry.
medicine to each other's wounds in a possible show of empathy.
Where's this from?
CNN.
How behind is everyone? The chimps are a common ancestor. They show empathy and morals just like us. Fucking dogs do. Why are people shocked by this?
Because it was between people who had. It was between people. It was between chimps who had no direct familial or sexual relation. It was a female chimp like healing a male chimp who had no relationship to her in any way.
Because they're neighbors or because they're
applying
the
like
same
a
clan.
poultice.
That's
They're applying
awesome.
like a medicinal poultice to an injury, and the researcher couldn't understand why. And so, like, oh, I guess they must have empathy.
Yeah, but why is the researcher think they didn't have empathy before?
Well, just because of the prevalence of extreme violence and like and cruelty between chimps compared to humans.
Yeah, but if that chimp's from its like own clan,
yeah, it is.
Then that's all that matters. If the old woman across your street like fell and broke her hip and you could see it in public, you'd probably help. If it's some random stranger,
yeah, the chimp laid out their jacket on the road for the other chimp grandma to cross on. Like that was kind of what they're observing. They just thought it was an unambiguous example of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've known about the moral and intellectual capacity of animals for decades. We just like to ignore it because it lets us do capital better. Like we ignore that cows and pigs are smart. We, in other countries, they ignore that other animals that we view as pets are smart and they for food. Like it's all out of just our own survival that we ignore the plight of these sentient creatures.
But yeah, I know chimps kind of got a bad rep the other day when we were talking about the one that ate a woman's face. So I figured we should put this the other way around.
It didn't eat her face; it just tore it off for sport.
I stand corrected.
You have to know it did not apply medicine.
Yeah,
to the woman's wounds. What is chimp medicine?
It's probably like beeswax or like honey or some shit.
Yeah. It appeared to be a medicinal poultice.
Yeah, but that sounds like magic.
Some sort of ground up like herbal mixture. Like it suggested even like the use of tools, almost like a mortar and pestle.
Do chimps know alchemy? Do they have levels in alchemy?
Apparently chimps are better at like grinding up medicine than I am. I struggle to put that into like my baby food as a kid.
Probably just rubbed some grass and dirt on. I was like, yeah, it'll feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah, chimp infects other chimp and impossible to show empathy.
But yeah, it seemed as though they basically took some plants that they had previously just been like chewing for their own usage and chewed it into a poultice that was then applied to the wound externally, which is a pretty fucking elaborate thing for a chimp to figure out how to do.
I'm unimpressed because I was already so impressed with them.
Yeah, you
I'm
are
unimpressed by this individual act.
You're a resident simian expert.
You didn't make a fucking health potion.
Well, the other chimp survived, so either it worked or was placebo, but at least it wasn't poisonous.
Placebo. The other chimp was probably fine. It was just trying to like get in good favor with him.
Yeah,
grooming.
Well, I think the female chimp was past breeding age, so it was
but maybe their chimp kid will be like, "Oh, cool, we'll hang out together. We'll get each other bananas."
Yeah, it was networking.
There's a whole chimp economy.
It was chimp clout chasing.
Spotify is signed to deal with this chimp.
I'm willing to believe that the chimp showed empathy. and in solidarity with them, I will stand firm with any chimp who does altruistic acts.
I think I'm forced to take the centrist position on this for the sake of balance.
What is the centrist position on this?
They need a tax credit.
That the chimp who was applied medicine to should have the right to sue if he has bad outcomes in this administration of non-consensual aid.
And the other chimp should just go on OnlyFans to get out of this terrible medical career she's put herself in.
We did it. Another full circle connection.
We've done it.
The most seamless podcast on the internet.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Seamless. Except not. It's not a food delivery service.
I don't know, man. I would assume like tailoring.
Oh, that might be that's so the like order a bunch of suits and shit. Yeah, there's a whole bunch
With
of garbage.
zero seams.
So many subscription services, so little time.
Just
The suit that is not as it seems. Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a messy and fun one as far as I'm concerned. So I think we will see you next time with probably some more complicated episode with either media or deep dive or something.
Happy birthday to the ground.
Also, happy birthday, Jace. I'm sure you loved it.
Bye.
Up for most of it, which was good. See you.
Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.